So hopefully you can all see that. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about a few things and take about 15 minutes, and fingers crossed we will keep to time. So yeah, talk a bit about what EduMe is, what we do. Then the main theme today is around how we simplify access to our product for our users, and yeah, just get into a bit of detail around some of the work we're doing on localization. And obviously, if you've got any questions, feel free to shout. So I guess let me start with my least favorite topic, which is myself. I've actually been at EduMe for just about 6 or 7 months, and I've only really been a developer for about a year and a bit. So I've spent, but I'm not also 21. So I have spent most of my career doing stuff that is entirely unrelated to software development, and I share that because I guess, you know, if any of you are looking for a job, then know that at least at EduMe we are prepared to take on people who haven't got a classical developer career. I won't go into detail, but I started as a management consultant. I hated it. I went into restaurants, worked at Leon, did some operations stuff there. Then I did marketing at Evans Sarkos Carluccio's. I tried to start a business, and then the global pandemic hit, and that was a bit of a disaster. But in the process of doing that, I discovered that I love software development, and was lucky enough to persuade the guys at EduMe to give me a job, and here I am now. And another guy started with me, has been a chef for 10 years before he became a developer, and there's some people who've done nothing but development and have, you know, maths degrees from Cambridge, first in computer science. So we're not all new to the software development game. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about EduMe and and what we're about. So we're working on the basis that although most of us are now sat around a desk, I imagine, or looking at a screen, 80% of the global workforce is deskless, and we're being taken over by quotes millennials. So people born since 1981, and no surprise, we're all using smartphones, and it's changing the way that we consume information and we communicate. So we are a workforce success platform, which means that we think about how to engage staff, how to engage them, and how to communicate with them. And we are working with companies like Uber, Deloitte, Vodafone to help them with their many millions of employees. So what is it about our platform, I guess, that makes it a bit different? So first thing is it's a mobile first platform, and we try to be as intuitive as possible. Some of the feedback we get from our customers is that it's a very, very easy to use platform. So when they're trying to deliver training or information to their staff, then and those staff are not they're deskless workforce, so they're not used to spending their entire day staring at a screen. They find it very easy to use. We focus on things being concise and engaging, not long 40-minute slideshow presentations, or indeed 15-minute slideshow presentations like the one I'm giving now. And it should be accessible, right? And it should be something that the user enjoys doing, and that they want to come back to, and they come back to it frequently and don't spend very long at any given time. So in terms of how our customers actually use us, the main thing, I guess, the where we started out was around onboarding new joiners. So you can imagine someone like Uber or Deliveroo, they have an unbelievable number of drivers or riders, and there's new people joining all the time, all over the world, and that is quite a logistical challenge because they need to train them in all sorts of things, fundamentals around, what does being a driver for Uber look like? What are some of the compliance things that you need to be trained on in order to start the job, etc. So there's an awful lot around that. There's obviously continuous learning, for employees. There's always new things to be learned, updating them. And also there's just more generally a sense of belonging to a company that cares about your well-being as an employee, and making you feel valued, and our platform can help with all of those things. we're growing quite fast. So I joined probably towards the start of the recent burst of growth. So we have had a good pandemic, which we feel very grateful for. We know that it's not true of many people, but we raised $5 million of funding from a Silicon Valley VC last year. During the pandemic. When I joined, there were about 20 odd people in the company. I think we're now about 40 odd, and we expect to be quite a lot bigger than that by the end of the year. And these are some of the clients we work with. Some of them you will recognize, some of them you may not, but they're truly global. Tigo, for instance, one of our first customers, is based in mobile network based in South America, actually. So and there's some big guys like Uber and Deliveroo, etc., who keep us busy. So I won't talk through this slide in detail, but the reason we have grown is because people like our product, and our product makes a difference to our customers. So let's just take the Uber example. So they are using EduMe to train their drivers. There are millions of Uber drivers around the world. We're used by Uber worldwide. So we've managed to increase the supply hours provided by the drivers by 8%, average driver rating as well by their riders, and reducing onboarding times. And those numbers, look maybe smallish, single digit, but if you can imagine on the scale of Uber, that makes quite a material difference to their performance. And we're really happy that 98% of Uber's drivers say they'd recommend EduMe to their colleagues. So that feels like that's important to us, that the drivers enjoy it as well as the admins and the people that are actually buying the product. So in terms of making life as easy as possible for our users, and I'll start talking a little bit more about the product and some of the things that we focus on as a company. So it is, like I say, we've got millions of users, and it is super important and fundamental to our success that they find using our product as easy as possible. So just to start at the top, fundamentally, we are a mobile-first platform. You can either use the web app or you can browse it on mobile. You can use the platform on the desktop. The vast majority of our users will access it via a mobile browser or the app itself. We have, for some of our customers, actually become embedded within their own in-house apps. So at the moment they use a web view. So although it's within the app, they're actually accessing our web platform. I don't know if anyone's come across Fountain, but they're the world leaders on basically hiring and onboarding new users, new staff members. So for companies which have typically used by companies that have an awful lot of staff, like Uber or Deliveroo, then they allow you to hire and onboard people at scale, and we're fully integrated with them so that the EduMe courses can be created as part of an overall workflow that the company requires their new joiners to go through. We're also integrated with a company called Braze that allows admins to generate passwordless links for their users. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. So we provide, as a company, I guess 4 main ways in which users can log into the platform. So there's a straightforward, what you might imagine: use your email, or indeed you can use your phone number. Here's your email, enter your password, off you go. That's what everyone has. We also allow admins to generate what are so-called self-sign-up links, where they can send a link to a user. When the user clicks on it, they are automatically enrolled in the course. So if the admin provides a link to a course, then the user clicks on that link, they're automatically enrolled in that course, and all they need to do is enter some basic details: their name, typically an email or phone number. They enter a password and they're in. So we don't require small things. We don't require you to double enter your password. We don't require you to then go and check your email and get the code from the email and enter it back in order to get in. This is for people who are on the move and want to get into the training quickly. We also allow companies to set up, use their existing authentication, so using an SSO process. So again, this is set up for either SAML or OAuth setups, so that if you have, let's say, a company login that's already set up, you can use that to then also authenticate yourself into EduMe. And then there's something called, well, we call them seamless links, so passwordless login. And this is a link which actually has zero authentication on it whatsoever, so allows a user just to click on the link and takes them straight into a course and creates a user account for them within EduMe immediately. So there's a sort of security risk in the sense that if you don't want anyone else to see the content behind that link, then you need to be careful with it. But it's used, for instance, when we are embedded within an app. Behind the scenes, there's a passwordless link that will allow the user within the app to move from the native app content into EduMe and back again without the user noticing any authentication happening. So I guess a nice way to streamline the user experience, but make sure that we're tracking the user in the back end on our side. So that's a bunch of stuff we've done already, and I guess is one of the, where we've had good feedback on it, but there's always more you can do. So here's a nice big map of the world, and I'll come back to Uber because they're a big name and everyone knows who they are. They work in 85 countries worldwide, but they use basically the same onboarding program for the new drivers everywhere. But obviously, 85 countries don't all speak the same language. So we already offer 35 languages in our platform. But, and this is where I'm going to get a bit into the detail, and forgive me, so the detail here is what's important. So we allow admins to set up groups of users, and within that group you can create a number of different courses, etc. But the language is set at a group level, not at a user level. So if let's take a Belgian user who might speak Flemish or French. So if they want to present a course in the onboarding course in Flemish, they need to have a Flemish group. And if they want to have the same course but in French, they need to create a completely different group. Now that's sort of fine, but it's not really what having exactly the same courses just in a different language in a different group is not a very helpful way of setting things up, and means that then all your group reporting is not very helpful. For Uber, that's not a meaningful distinction. They treat them as basically the same users, but they're just consuming the same content in a different language. So it kind of breaks a little bit when you get to that. So we want to set things up at a user level. So now, forgive me, this is a really ugly slide, but what we have here is our database setup, and I just wanted to get into detail to explain where we are. So just to talk you through, these are the tables in blue in the middle here. So a user exists in a user table. There's a joining table called users groups that takes them to the groups table. So there's your Belgian group, your Flemish group, or your French speaking group. That's then linked via a joining table to a courses group, and then within courses you have lessons. So that's how you get from a user to an individual lesson. Okay. Now language is set at a group level. So as I say, if you want to create a new lesson in a new language, you need to create an entirely new group, which will then link through to a new lesson. And again, to get into detail, the lesson content we store as a JSON blob. So it's literally the word for word, the content, the images, the video, etc. is stored there. What we're working on at the moment is changing things so that actually we're going to create a new table. So here, the lessons, rather than within the lessons table containing the content as a JSON blob, is actually going to reference keys. Content keys, and those are going to be linked to a new table called localized content. So here there'll be a content key, and then it will contain a localized value, basically a language specific value for each of those keys. And those keys could be text, they could be an image source, they could be a video source. And that would allow us to, for a single lesson, to hold within the localized content table multiple different languages, so that you no longer need to have a different group in order to serve a lesson in a different language. But that's the database structure behind the scenes. How do the admins actually interact with that? So I guess this is where I want to talk a bit about I'll tell you what we're going to do, and I'll explain how it is an example of how we approach development in general. So the first version is pretty rough and ready, and I hope that the guys who did the work don't mind me saying that. But the localized content we're actually going to export into a Google Sheet, and I put a screenshot on the right, so it looks as just as ugly as a regular spreadsheet does. But fundamentally, down the left, you've got the content keys, and then you basically have a column for every language that you want to present it in. And we export the default language, so let's say that's English. They can just add a new column, and then they go about the translation process of translating the copy, sourcing a new image if you need to change that, sourcing a new video, etc. So they would literally manually enter the content into that Google Sheet, row by row for each of the content keys. They then send it back to us, and we do, again, this is a sort of version 1 or version 0.1. We would then verify that, because if you can imagine in a Google Sheet, there's very limited validation. You could do all sorts of things might break, and if we allowed them to upload it directly into our admin console, then there's a decent chance that something might go wrong. So we do some validation, we then upload it, and then in the admin portal, the admin user will then have the ability to basically to generate different course links with just simply using a URL parameter. So that there'll be a query at the end around language equals EN, ES, FL, whatever it might be. So the end result for the admin user is something very simple. We're just changing a URL parameter. Now that is version 1. It's reasonably crude, but I guess this is where it comes into how we approach these things. If you think about the kind of customers that are going to be using this, they tend to be large and quite sophisticated, and to have quite sophisticated admins and in-house dev teams. So they're more than capable of handling this, and and this is, I guess, a relatively simple thing for us to get out the door. It's not that simple, but it's the quickest way. What would we do after that? Well, maybe the next step is probably going to be automating this so that when they've updated the spreadsheet, it doesn't have to come back via us for validation. They can just self-serve themselves completely. Version 3, you could easily imagine, obviously, ideally, you'd end up with this probably in our admin panel in the UI so that they can do the translation there. But you could say, well, isn't this a bit crude? Don't you want to have something more polished, ready to go? But actually, if we did that, it would take a lot longer. A lot more work our side, and there's a fairly high chance that we would go down the wrong track. And we've got quite a lot of customers, but we're still a B2B business. So we work closely with our clients to understand what it is they want, and we try to build and then iterate. So this is the first iteration, and they may say, actually, it's absolutely brilliant, you nailed it. It's quite unlikely that's going to happen. They're probably going to say, this is great, can we change the following things? And we would rather go through short, faster iteration cycles in order to deliver something that is really going to be used and deliver value, rather than try to create something really polished that then takes a lot more work, takes longer to develop in the first place, and takes a lot more work to change, I guess, when we get any feedback after that. So that was that. This is a slide saying, reminding you about what we do. So that's I guess a quick introduction into something that we're always focused on, which is making life as easy as possible for our users. And that was just a bit of a deep dive into that particular project. As Sam said at the start, we're hiring. We've got junior, mid, and senior positions open. You should be able to see the link below in the notes. We visit our website as a careers section. We would love to hear from you. Our tech stack is based on React on the front end. We're apps in React Native. We're using Node on the back end and a Postgres database. So hopefully reasonably mainstream technology, and we would love to hear from you if you're interested in working from us. And if you have any questions, do shout. Thank you very much.